Welcome back to the garage. Gerald here with you, of course. Another month has passed. It is October 1st as I'm recording this. You guys know the drill. However, before we get into that, there are timestamps below if you're not interested in this part, but I hope you are. Channel memberships are open. The memberships are growing as awards season is getting closer and closer. At least I think that's why. Also because I'm charming as hell. I assume that's a big reason why too. Right? Well, we gave away The Accountant 2 last month to one of my members. Lucky entrant there, got that movie. Now this month, in honor of Halloween, Warner Brothers just put out a 4K version of The Corpse Bride, Tim Burton's Corpse Bride. And I'm going to give away this 4K code to one of my members at the end of this month. This will be the October giveaway. I give one away every single month to my members. There's all other kinds of sweet perks too, like custom emojis, badges to show everyone that you're one of my biggest fans. Just click join down below and you can read all that information. Thank you so much for the consideration, and to my current members, God knows I love you. Now, with all that out of the way, let's bring in the monthly tier list here. Here we go. So we're dealing with 12 titles. I think that was also what I had in August. So the cinephile status is on the fence, but I do have a lot of stuff on the docket. I also, in the month of September, did an entire rewatch of PTA. If you guys haven't seen it yet, it was the video right before this one, but I'll tag it on here for you. I did my ranking of all the Paul Thomas Anderson films from 10 to 1. Let's look at the tiers real quick. It's pretty easy when I do the monthly tier list. If you're on the loved tier or the S tier, you're like a 9 or a 10 out of 10. Might not be a whole lot of those, but there were a few in the mix. Liked is, I enjoyed it. It's like a 7 or an 8 probably. Sure, I guess, is a movie that was kind of middle of the road. It wasn't horrible. It wasn't great. It's right around a 6 out of 10. No Thanks would be anything in that like 4 or 5 range out of 10, where it's like not the worst thing I've ever seen, but I have no intention of ever watching it again. And then Make It Stop is the flip side of that, where it's below a 4 out of 10. And if I ever have to see that again, I might start plucking out my own eyelashes. Why would I do that? That's more painful. All right, starting things out for us, I think Tiermaker does these in alphabetical order. Don't forget to follow me over there if you're interested. I'm just the Awards Garage. Same thing on Letterboxd. Hit me up. Americana stars Sydney Sweeney and Paul Walter Hauser. I'm going to put it on the liked tier. It wasn't amazing, but I was pleasantly surprised with this movie. It had a very like Coen Brothers ripoff kind of vibe to it. It was definitely like a Western noir film about this heist of a really famous Native American jacket that they steal from a collector. Sydney Sweeney is a server at a diner and she has a stuttering problem. She ends up kind of getting into a romantic relationship with Paul Walter Hauser. So right off the bat, you have to suspend disbelief. Just kidding. PWH, I love you. But the real standout in that movie, even though I love Sweeney, was Halsey. She has a role in this. And you guys remember last year she was in Maxine. She was really fucking good in this movie. I was like, okay, you can act, Halsey. I'm on board. One that would probably go down as one of the biggest disappointments for me so far this year is Eleanor the Great, which is Scarlett Johansson's directorial debut. It stars June Squibb in the Eleanor lead role. She's like 93 years old. Her elder friend that she was a roommate with passes on, and she moves back with her daughter to New York. And while there, I don't want to give it away because I don't think the trailer actually tells you this. I found out when I watched the movie and I was kind of like, oh, okay, I didn't realize that storyline existed. But it does surround like Jewish Americans and the Holocaust and the history of that and her dealing with the loss of her friend and how she kind of copes with that grief. It was like a weird vibe. It had off-kilter vibes to it. It was like 1 second it was kind of like funny. The next second it was kind of like cringy, where like when an old lady yells at you in a grocery store or something like that. And then it got really serious and like ominous at times when you started talking about the Holocaust stuff. So it was just kind of like this tonally, and it didn't completely work for me. June Squibb is absolutely breathtakingly phenomenal. I love her. Everything she's in, she's so endearing. And she does do her best to save this movie overall. You can skip it or wait for it on demand if you love June Squibb, but it's just kind of mid. Another one that's kind of mid, but I probably like it a little bit better than Eleanor the Great overall, is a movie called Good Boy, which is a horror film that introduces this new unique premise where the POV is being told through the perspective of the dog. So we have a main character in the film who has cancer and is very sick, and his pet dog, Indy, goes with him to this secluded kind of like house out in the woods that his grandfather owned, and he left it to him. So they go out there together to kind of like spend the weekend. And while they're there, it turns out that house is haunted, and there's a bit of a curse kind of surrounding the house, and we kind of learn different pieces of the past for the grandfather that kind of put that puzzle together by the end of the movie. We also get the standard tropes of like a really good classic haunted house film. There's a lot of like floorboard squeaks, door creaks, loud bangs upstairs, like flashes of like somebody possibly walking by a mirror. Like there's all kinds of that like haunted house kind of imagery, which did work really well. The problem is, even with the movie being under 90 minutes, it was too long for that to kind of continue and work for the whole length of the film. And then when we get to the end of the movie, the last act of the film, and everything kind of comes to a head, it was a bit underwhelming the way it ended, although it was a lot more emotional than I thought it would be. I love Indy. I mean, this dog's acting, guys. I say watch it just for that. I couldn't believe it. I'm sure there was a lot of editing involved to like get the right shots and the right face, but this is a real dog, no CGI. It's actually Ben Leonberg, the director's dog. It's his actual pet that he had on set to do these scenes. And the facial expression, like, it's kind of creepy, honestly, because he's honestly, after this movie, I would say he's like Oscar worthy. I mean, if there was like a pet category, or if they let dogs be in the human 5 for best actor, he could be in it. I mean, it was really, really good. Next up is one that disappointed me. Another big disappointment, right up there with the Owner of the Great for me, and that's going to be Highest to Lowest from Spike Lee. I'm also going to put that on Sure, I Guess, because it is around a 5 to a 6 out of 10 for me. Denzel Washington is great in it, as is A$AP Rocky. There's a lot of good performances. If you know the Kurosawa film, which this is a modernization, kind of a remake of that, it's nowhere near it. It doesn't hold a flame to it. And Spike Lee's fallen into this trap before with international remakes. And also the thing about Highest to Lowest is it was such a strange watch. Like, the technical crafts involved were all good on their own, but mixed together it was like a weird hodgepodge. I'm thinking, honestly, most specifically the score. This is a weird score in this film that is playing way too loudly. It's almost like a Christopher Nolan like sound effects, but it's music playing over like people talking in the scene about something pretty serious, you know, somebody being kidnapped or dying or whatever, homeless, you know, all these like serious topical conversations. And then the score is like this really loud, like jazzy piano number. It's like really fucking weird. It just did not match. I hated the score in this movie, and it ruined almost every scene that it showed up in. I promise I didn't let this sway me in my rating of the movie either, but I'm a huge Boston sports fan, particularly the Red Sox. And there's a scene in this movie on the New York subway where they're not kind to me or any of the other Red Sox fans out there. So you're going to end up on the Sure, I Guess tier, Spike. All right, here we go. Now, House of Dynamite from Catherine Bigelow. I just saw that a couple nights ago as I'm sitting here, and this is a tough one for me because I loved it and I liked it. I'm going to be doing a full review on the channel when the embargo lifts for that one, so I won't dive super deep into it, but I will just say about 80% of the movie worked 10 out of 10 for me. About 20% of it was like I didn't really enjoy, which would be like a 5 out of 10. So I guess I'm going to split the difference. I can't put it on the love tier because I do have some problems with it, but it's going to go on the like tier because it's easily at least a 7 out of 10 for me, if not an 8. And Bigelow is the GOAT when it comes to directing these modern wartime stories. Obviously, The Hurt Locker, Oscar winner, right? Got her the first female director Oscar. Zero Dark 30, amazing film based on true events. And then you have A House of Dynamite, which is not based on true events, but it's like somewhere in the near future, not too far in the near future. And when you watch it, you go, has that happened? Or you go, that could happen, which it absolutely could happen. And to know the level of research and probably retired military people that she interviewed, government folks for this, you know it's very authentic. And you always get that with Catherine Bigelow. Even when she did Point Break, she got like feedback from surfers and had them on set, professional surfers and people that do it leisurely to like get it accurate. And you just know that she's really, and it's been a long time since Detroit, right, that she did a movie. So she took her time with this one. It is pulse pounding. For all intents and purposes, it is essentially like an office setting. Now, of course, it's a government, you know, situation room type setting, high stress or whatever, but it's like these folks that work in an office together every day in DC. And you would think it's the most pulse pounding, thrilling action sequences you've ever seen in your life. But it's just people standing around a phone. It's just conference calls. I mean, it's like she just knows how to do it, man. Now I got one for the bottom tier. Make It Stop. If Letterboxd would have allowed me to give a movie a 0 out of 10, that's what I would have done. I think I gave it a half star on Letterboxd. This would be a 1 out of 10 at the most. It's a movie called Kill Streak, which I had a screener for, and I'm like, all right, well, if they sent a screener out, maybe it's decent. Maybe it's kind of a hidden gem. Like, I don't even want to spend a ton of time on this, but basically what it is this group of friends log into this like Twitch stream to do a multiplayer first-person shooter game. Okay, and they're in the lobby for this game. Think kind of like a Fortnite type game, right? And while they're there, they get there's I think 4 of them. It's the 4 or 5 of them. They get an invite. Each of them get an invite to join a new game that's being beta tested or whatever. You're the first one, you know. And so of course they all join. Which, by the way, don't do that. That's probably a virus, first of all. But they all join this new game. And to make a long story short, without spoiling too much of it in case you decide to watch it, is there's like a supernatural entity or demon, or they don't really ever tell you, but it's just like a supernatural force that's like controlling the game. Created the game and is kind of controlling it. And if you die in the game, you die in real life. And you also can't leave the game. If you exit the game, the entity will kill you. There's a weird twist in the end that was like out of left field that I feel like the writers were just like, okay, we got to end this somehow. The video game graphics are like literally the funniest shit I've ever seen. Like, they actually got a video game company to do the scenes. So it does look authentic to like video games. The only problem is it's like early 2000s authentic. So it's, I don't know, it's a weird flex. I guess the budget maybe hindered them a little bit. I just didn't care about any of them. I didn't believe what they were going through. The graphics were laughable. The horror just it wasn't scary at all. The scariest part of the movie was probably when it would cut to the POV of just the video game. If you guys have ever played those first person like horror games and you're like going through these dark corridors and shit, that was probably the scariest part, honestly. But the movie itself was super flat and cheesy, and not in a way where it's like, oh, they're nudging you. They knew that this was going to be shitty. You know, I was talking earlier about highest to lowest and kind of the weird tone with that movie. And same thing with Eleanor the Great. That's a bit of a theme in September, because the same thing happened for me with Paul Greengrass's The Lost Bus, starring Matthew McConaughey and America Ferrera. This is based on a true story of the largest California wildfire in Paradise, California. While there are some thrilling moments, especially when you think, oh, this is based on a true story, these young kids on the school bus. So it does have its moments, but it's like almost 2.5 hours long. If this movie had been like 90 minutes or less, it would have been like a very taut, thrilling, suspenseful, like you could have character development, but it wouldn't have to be drawn out like they try to give us between McConaughey and his son in this movie. But instead, it's way too elongated, and it just allows you to kind of like detach from what's happening, and then you come back into it, and then you'll go off again. Also, the screenplay, the dialogue in this movie is like the most basic writing. I mean, it's like shit like, oh, I love you, son. I hope this fire doesn't keep us apart. If this is the last time I see you, I'm just so proud of you, son. Like, I mean, literally, that's a line from the movie. Well, from no thanks with The Lost Bus to loved, holy fucking perfection shit movie of the year. Ding, 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 ding. One battle after another. Of course, from Paul Thomas Anderson PTA, starring Leo, the newcomer Chase Infinity, who I had just added to my supporting actress predictions. Stay tuned for that, which will also be on the channel next week for my October updates, but I feel really good about Chase Infinity's chances. She plays Leo's daughter in the film. Tiana Taylor is also still in the mix for me, but her part was much smaller in terms of screen time than I initially thought it would be based on the trailers and everything else. I thought she would be pretty much throughout the film, but she really kind of goes away after the first half hour. The film is anchored not only by Leo, which is honestly one of the best performances of his career, and the guy has turned in some all-timers, but it's also anchored by Sean Penn and, like I said, Chase Infinity. It's a great cast that could end up in like best casting, SAG ensemble, that kind of stuff. It is the first time, at least in memory, and I'm a huge fan of PTA, that he's told a modern story, present day, that is trying to say something that is important. You know, it's a topical, timely narrative. And he's never done that unless it's been like, you know, a period piece in the 60s, 70s, talking about Vietnam, or, you know, that shit might be existing kind of in the backdrop. But this is like what he wants to kind of get the message out and where the country is or where we could possibly be heading. At the same time, it doesn't play that way. You think about it after, but he's not preaching it to you. The characters aren't preaching it to you. Everybody in the movie is invalid, basically. You might believe one side over the other with your personal beliefs, but everybody's flawed. There's no hero in the film. Maybe Benicio del Toro. He's so fucking good in this. Another one that I really liked, I'm actually going to put it on the like tier, is a romantic comedy called Splitsville, which I didn't know what to expect with this movie, but it was so good. It was so fresh and sexy and fun. I love Dakota Johnson. She's the lead in the movie, but the general premise is that her and her husband, who have been married for a couple of years, are in an open relationship. They let each other, have affairs on the side, and they don't care. When they're together, they're a happy family. They take care of the kids, do whatever. But when they're off with whoever, they don't care. Then you have another couple played by Adria Aroha. Dude, gotta be one of the hottest people in Hollywood right now. I'm in love with her. And her husband's played by Kyle Marvin. So they split up. They're married. They get separated. He goes to stay with Dakota Johnson, her husband, because her husband Paul is his best friend. Has been his best friend since childhood. When Kyle Martin's there, I can't remember his character's name, but when he's there staying with Paul, him and Dakota Johnson have sex. And of course, like I said, he did that thinking, oh, they're not going to care because they're in an open relationship, whatever. Turns out Paul can't deal with that. He lets her have sex with anybody that he doesn't know, but as soon as it was his best friend, it's a whole thing. And the movie takes a completely different avenue after that point, and these four kind of lovers are intertwined throughout the whole movie. A lot of funny gags and side characters in the film that show up because Aronia is like going on a bit of a dating spree, like Tinder, like swiping right, and everybody's dating her. And we get to meet a lot of those side characters that end up becoming friends with her ex. It's a whole funny bit they do in the movie. So it's very charming, very endearing, sexy, funny. I really liked it. There's also a fight sequence in this movie that was a lot of one take, not the whole thing because they go to different rooms, but a lot of it was one take that you got to imagine was really good choreography and stunt performers, I would think, and then probably the actors too. But it's like Paul and Marvin are like, when he finds out that he had sex with Dakota Johnson, it's like a 10-minute scene in the movie of them fighting all around this like house with all this it's like $1 million home, and they're breaking shit and falling out of windows, and it's like the craziest shit. It was really good, but it was also really funny. I'm also going to put Steve up on the like tier. I hate the title of this movie, especially coming off of like the Steve Jobs films and then Minecraft this year. I don't know why they decided to call this Steve. I don't even think the book that it's based on is called Steve. I think that's called Shy or something to the effect of Shy, because he's another one of the main characters. But Cillian Murphy plays Steve, our titular character, which I hate. But it's a modern version of Dead Poets Society, but it has the energy of like a Train Spotting or like early Danny Boyle. It's very frantic and high energy, but it's a reform school for juvenile boys who also have mental health issues. So it's acting as a bit of a therapeutic hospital kind of setting, but it's also where they're learning their schooling, and they're of high school age. I think they might be close to college age actually, but I think they're like senior age in high school. And it's a special school for those types of folks. And Steve, who has gone through stuff in his past that we learn about and is also dealing with addiction, alcoholism, is the headmaster basically. He's the head teacher at the school and becomes very attached to one of the kids that is kind of rehabilitating until something happens with his parents that kind of makes him backslide a little bit. And his name is Shy. So they have a really special relationship in the movie. But Cillian Murphy, to come off of Oppenheimer, I don't know if he's done a movie in between these. I don't think he has. RDO, he did all the little things or all the small things. Wait a minute, that's Blink 182. What's it called? Anyway, aside from that one, he did this one. But if you put those two together, it actually still makes my point that he just won an Academy Award. He can do anything he wants. He can be any villain in any superhero movie. He can do any TV show on any streamer. He's doing these like indie films that speak to him and have these important messages and deal with these important populations that don't often get the camera and the light shined on them. In this case, those struggling with mental health, especially at that age. It's a tough watch at times, and the characters, you feel for them and you want to kind of do what you can to help them, but then you also stop and you go, man, if I was one of these teachers in these scenarios, this would be the most stressful job ever. There's also a great supporting performance from Tracy Ullman in this that I didn't expect. I would say watch Steve if for no other reason for the performances. I mean, Cillian Murphy, Tracy Ullman, they all kill it. The young man who plays Shy is really, really good too. You just feel what he's going through. I'm also going to put a little found footage, I guess. I'll explain in a second. I'm also going to put that on the like tier. We got quite a few up there this month, I'm just noticing. But here's how I'll explain it. It's basically a 90-minute-ish Dateline NBC episode or Unsolved Mysteries episode. So, those Dateline NBCs where it's like, we were in the suburbs of New England and this family went missing and were later found in a creek nearby. Never would we have thought that it would have been a ritualistic cult that took them out of their homes and that kind of shit. With like Keith Morrison for some reason laughing as he's narrating it. That's kind of what this movie is. It's fictional, but it plays out like that, and they're interviewing. There's actual on-camera interviews with talking head interviews with the detectives that worked the case for many years of this serial killer, who uses this religious, like old religious lore in astronomy and all this weird shit we kind of pick up on throughout the movie to base it on his victims. And we get to see some of the victims in real time when they're abducted and killed by the killer. So it's basically that Dateline NBC or Unsolved Mysteries setup with the mockumentary style. And then the found footage comes in when it's like archival, supposedly archival footage of the killer actually killing the people that are victims that they were investigating the crimes for. So it is Dateline NBC with like gore and brutality, and the horror elements come in that way. A lot of low budget practicality, which I really like too. There's even like modern horror built in here with like FaceTime, and there's a girl who's streaming on YouTube that gets abducted and like, you know, shit like that. So it was a very interesting like amalgamation of all these different kind of really successful horror niches, and they kind of like mixed them together. And then we're going to end on another one on the love tier. The only one joining One Battle up there this month, or for the month of September, is a movie called Twinless. So this is directed by James Sweeney, who is also one of the stars of the film, Dennis. And Dylan O'Brien plays a twin who has recently lost his twin brother. He's still grieving. His mom is a fucking wreck. By the way, played by Lauren Graham, one of the Gilmore Girls. And Dennis is attending these kind of like group therapy sessions, these groups that are dealing with people who have lost their twin. And he meets Dylan O'Brien there. So they meet there under that common kind of ground. We find out throughout the course of the movie, even though it was kind of alluded to already, that Dennis is gay, whereas Dylan O'Brien's character is not gay. But his twin brother was gay before he passed. So I didn't see the trailer for this, so I don't want to spoil anything beyond that. But it takes a really interesting turn that I didn't expect, maybe because I didn't see the trailer. It made it much like darker and heftier than it originally started out as, because it was kind of like this, almost like Tim Burton-esque kind of like dark humor in the first like half hour, where it's like, this is really bad that this happened to this mom and this brother, and they're obviously having a tough time coping with it. But it was kind of like funny. It was presented in like a lighthearted way. And then we get this kind of like out of left field thing that changes everything with the dynamic of the characters. And I'm trying not to spoil it, so I'm sorry I'm being vague, but that turned it into thematically a different film where it did really lean into the grief. It was still funny throughout the course of the film. There were different jokes and characters that were funny, but it just became a lot heavier. You know, like a lot more real to the viewer, at least to me. It was very emotional. I cried during this movie. Like it was like I just didn't expect that. I mentioned it earlier when I was talking about Splitsville, but of course that was for different reasons for comedy. But in this case, it was just it was a drama with a lot of funny parts and some characters that you just love. I mean, I connected to all these characters. They all have issues. They all are basically the villain at one point or another throughout the course of the movie. But you feel for them, you're sympathetic for all of them because of what they're going through and their shared experience in this kind of world surrounding twins and, you know, brotherhood and sisterhood for other characters that we meet. So it was really good. I was really surprised by this. I think Dylan O'Brien, who by the way plays both twins, so they have flashbacks to before his twin passed away, and he plays that character too, the gay version, and then he plays himself in present day, who's not gay. Very different personalities, very different mannerisms, does a great job, that dual role, right? We saw that with Michael B. Jordan this year. We saw that with Robert Pattinson and Mickey 17 this year. So here's another one, Twinless. So I think 2025 is the year of like the dual role from these actors. So great movie. Twinless is easily one of my favorites for the month of September. Now, as you see, there's only two up here on the love tier, and they're in the right order. One Battle After Another was my favorite movie of the month, probably my favorite of the year so far. Twinless was my number 2. Down here, I would put it in this order since I don't have enough on that top tier. House of Dynamite, probably Steve, probably next, even though it's a bit of a downer. Then Splitsville, and then Strange Harvest, and then Americana. That's probably the order I would do those. And this top tier is correct as well. Down here, I would put Good Boy before Eleanor the Great, but I would leave that there and then highest to lowest. And then unfortunately, Lost Bus and fucking Kill Streak. Jesus, why does that thing exist? They are on their own down there on their own tier, so they get to stay put. All right, guys, that is it. Let me know what you thought of my September tier list. Only 12 new films, but I've already seen one for the month of October, and it's October 1st. And I'm going to see The Rock in the Smashing Machine this evening. So that'll be 2 in the first day of October. So I'm off to a good start. Don't forget about channel memberships. If you're interested, click join down below. and you can help me keep the lights on out here in the garage. And if not, I really appreciate you subscribing and tuning in. Thanks so much. I'll see you next time in the garage.